Welcome to this week's episode of Insight. During this week's show, we're going to cover three topics. The first one is going to be the visit of the French defense minister to Armenia and what came out of that. Second one is going to be the internment of Armenian French resistance hero Missak Manouchian. And thirdly, we're going to close with the story of the arrest and the release of the Azeri criminal in Moscow. Most important news of the week was the visit of the French defense minister to Armenia, Sébastien Lecornu. He came to Armenia accompanied with some of the representatives of the leading French military-industrial complex companies. During his visit, many new contracts and agreements were signed between the two countries and the two parties. Let's go over what specific things came out of the trip, and we'll start with old public information that was confirmed during this trip. The first thing that we're going to be getting is 3 Talos radar systems, night vision equipment for our soldiers from Saffron, Mistral air defense systems, Bastion armored personnel carriers, and most importantly, training for our military forces. The defense minister himself oversaw the delivery of the above-mentioned radars and mentioned more is on the way. He was also quoted as saying, if Armenia needs it, short and medium long-range missiles will also be part of the development of the defense capabilities. I won't go into too much detail about what equipment will come to Armenia, but all of them are significant. Now we're going to move on to public information of what's new as far as what we're going to be getting from France to upgrade our capabilities. First one is going to be surface-to-air missiles, medium long-range missiles, sniper rifles from one of France's leading companies, as well as training that goes with that, mountain training for our Armenian special forces. This is what intrigues me the most, a permanent liaison officer for general reforms in our Ministry of Defense, and a high-ranking officer who's going to be a liaison in setting up, specifically dealing with our air defense systems, which has been one of our greatest weaknesses. Overall, there's many different agreements that were signed that greatly expand military cooperation and training. The truth is that whenever you have agreements like this, in many cases, what is not talked about is as relevant as what is discussed. So this is one of those cases where we don't know would actually be better than what we do know as far as what further upgrades we're going to be getting from our new, much more higher level relationship with the French defense sector. As we're trying to understand the significance of all this and analyzing it, I think there's a couple of things of note. The first one is that the weapons that are being provided to us will greatly upgrade our capacities on what I call the hardware side. But frankly, none of these things mean anything unless we have a greater upgrade on the software side, which is military leadership, capacity, and the generalship in the Army. And it's very clear that there's going to be significant areas of cooperation that's going to be focused on the software side, which to me is as important as whatever weapons that we're getting. When trying to understand this in the bigger, wider screen of things, I think there's a very clear element that that Mr. Macron himself has very specific sympathies for this country, but in political circles, that only goes so far. I think there's other things at play here. The French are being pushed out of many areas of their usual domain in West Africa, in many cases by Russians and Russian proxies, and this is too fantastic of an opportunity to play payback against the Russian state. Obviously, all of this has become a lot easier because of the idiocy coming out of Baku and this constant demonization of attacking of France that's actually made our life a lot easier. And realistically, none of this would have happened if the collective West had not given France a green light to take military reform in Armenia, and while doing so, slowly pushing Armenia and bringing it into the Western fold. What we're seeing here is also sort of a synchronized dance between the two parts. This visit comes at the same time, at the same week in which the Prime Minister talks about freezing our CSTO membership. News has come out, or has been leaked, that the Russian border guards are going to be slowly being pushed out of the country, starting with the airport in Armenia. And the most provocative one of all is that there's likely to be a Zelensky visit to Armenia sometime in March. This is actually opening the door to, military capacity increases and purchases, not just from France, but It will open us up for us to purchase from other Western countries, specifically the most important one being the United States, which politically is really the hardest nut to crack. Now we're going to move on to the second topic of the week, which is the internment of Missak and Meline Manouchian in the French Pantheon. The internment of these two Armenian heroes of the French resistance, which is the eternal resting place of the greatest heroes of France, happened on the 80th anniversary of Missak's execution by the Nazis. The event was attended by the entire French leadership and their counterparts from Armenia. Now let's give a little bit of background about who Missak Manouchian was. Manouchian was born on September 1st, 1906 in Western Armenia into a poor Armenian family. His parents were murdered during the Armenian genocide in 1915, and him and his brother managed to escape to France. In 1934, Manouchian joined the French Communist Party. From 1935 to 1937, he edited the Armenian language left-wing newspaper Zangu. And he also went on to start a literary magazine with friends that translated the works of Baudelaire and Rimbaud into Armenian, making many of them available for the first time. During World War II, he was the military commissioner of FTP-MOI, a group consisting of European immigrants in the Paris region, which carried out assassinations and bombings of Nazi targets. The Manouchian group carried out almost 30 successful attacks on German interests from August to November of 1943. In fact, Charles Aznavour and his family were members of the Manouchian resistance group and were recognized after the war for rescuing Jews and Armenians from Nazi persecution. I'm going to close this section about the Manouchians by reading a very touching personal letter that Mr. Manouchian wrote to his wife a few hours before his execution by the Nazis. Here it goes. My dear Meline, my beloved little orphan, in a few hours, I will no longer be of this world. We are going to be executed today at 3. This is happening to me like an accident in my life. I don't believe it, but I nevertheless know that I will never see you again. I joined the Army of Liberation as a volunteer, and I die within inches of victory and our final goal. I wish for happiness for all those who will survive and taste the sweetness of freedom and the peace of tomorrow. I'm sure the French people and all those who fight for freedom will know how to honor our memory with dignity. At this moment of death, I proclaim that I have no hatred for the German people or anyone at all. Everyone will receive what he is due as punishment and as reward. I will die with 23 of my comrades and with the courage and the serenity of a man with a peaceful conscience. Today is sunny. It's in looking at the sun and the beauties of nature that I love so much that I say farewell to life and to all of you, my beloved wife and my beloved friends. I forgive all of those who did me evil or wanted to do so, with the exception of he who betrayed us to redeem his own skin, and those he sold out. I ardently kiss you, as well as your sister and all those who you know near and far. I hold all of you against my heart. Farewell, your friend, your comrade, your husband. P.S. I have 15,000 francs at the Valais at Rue de Plaisance. If you can get it, pay off all my debts and give the rest to Armenia. This is what real men sound like. Now we're going to move to the third item of the week, which is the arrest of the Azeri war criminal in Moscow and then his release. Police in Moscow's international airport on Wednesday morning arrested an Azeri war criminal who during the 2020 war in Artsakh beheaded a pensioner and actually took a video of it and actually shared it on his social media. Because of that, the Armenian government had issued an international warrant against him. So technically, what the Russians had to do based on an international warrant is to arrest him, and turn him over to Armenian authorities for him to be prosecuted for the crimes that he committed. But obviously, being the Russia of today, and given the nature, the alliance between Baku and Moscow, he was promptly released and sent back to Baku. No one should waste any time trying to decipher what happened here. A criminalized state returning a criminal to another criminalized state. It is not a news story. It would only be a news story if that was not the case. Upon his return to Baku, this man, if we can call him that, the latest Azeri national hero, was greeted by hundreds of supporters at the airport. In conclusion, what more can be said after these last two stories that we outlined? There's frankly no greater symbolic and accurate contrast between our two countries. Our nation's heroes will spend the rest of eternity next to Victor Hugo, Voltaire, and Émile Zola. Their national hero will spend the rest of his short, miserable life free to travel between Baku and Karachi. Thank you for joining me in this week's episode of Insights.
Tu évites